Hello guys, my name is Prince and this is Math Center. Subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos. Post your comments and questions on my social media handles and I'll respond to it. We are still on the topic change of subjects. In the previous video, we learned how to change the subject of equations that involve fractions. In this video, we are going to learn how to change the subject of equations that involve square terms or square root signs. So, how do we change the subject of equations that involve square terms or square root sign? So this is going to be type 3. The equation involves a square or a square root sign. What do we do? The first point says that you should clear the square root sign by squaring both sides of the equation. So if there's a square root sign in the equation, what you do is that you clear the square root sign. You first have to remove the square root sign by squaring both sides of the equation. We will learn how to do that. If the variable that you want to make the subject is a squared term or a squared quantity, you take square root of both sides so that that variable can be made the subject. We will also understand how to do that. So the two main things that you need to take note are: if the variable that you want to make a subject is under the square root sign, you square both sides to clear the equation. If the variable that you want to make the subject is a square term, you take square root of both sides to make it the subject of the equation. Now let's take some questions and see how to do this. We have 4 questions here. We will solve the first one in this video, then we will solve the others in the subsequent videos. So let's take the question for this video. Given that t is equal to 2 pi square root of L over G, make L the subject of the equation. Find L if t is equal to 1, G is equal to 9.81, and pi is equal to 3.142. Give your answer in 3 significant figures. Okay, so this is our question. Let's concentrate on the first part. We have been given the equation t is equal to 2 pi square root of L over G, as we can see here, and we are being told to make L the subject of the equation. Now let's look at this question very clearly. You can see from here that we have to make L the subject of the equation, and L is under the square root sign. Because the variable that we want to make the subject is under the square root sign, the first thing we need to do is to get rid of the square root sign. In order to get rid of the square root sign, you have to square both sides of the equation. What do? We square all the terms on the left hand side and we square all the terms on the right hand side. So we square everything on the left hand side, then we square everything on the right hand side. So we are going to have what is on the left hand side is t, so t squared. Then we square everything here, so we are going to put everything there in the bracket. We are going to put everything on the right hand side in a bracket because there are more than one. You see, here because it was only one, that's why we went away to square it. But here, because there are more than one, we have to put everything there in a bracket, then we square it. I hope that is clear. So we go ahead with the squaring. Now when you do this, what do? We distribute the square for every number or variable here. So 2 will be squared, pi will be squared, then square root of L over G will also be a square. Now this is what's happening. So we are going to give the square to 2, so 2 squared. You will square pi, so pi squared. Then square root of L over G will also be a squared. Okay, that's what I meant by squaring everything on the left hand side and on the right hand side. So we will square 2, we will square pi, then we will square root of L over G. Okay, let's move on. T squared, so we have t squared. 2 squared, 2 raised to the power 2. We know from indices that 2 raised to the power 2 is 4. Pi squared, so we have pi squared. We also know from indices that whenever you have a number or a variable under a square root sign, let's say s squared, let's say x, square root of x. Sorry, I'm going to write it well so that you get it. let's say that we have the square root of x. So square root of, okay, let me use a. I think that's easier to write. So we have square root of a, and you squared this. You squared square root of a. The square will cancel the square root sign to give you a. So if you have square root of L over G and you square it, the square is going to cancel the square root sign. So here, this squared raised to the power 2 will cancel the square root sign so that we have L over G. Now this L over G is multiplying what we have here. So we are going to have 4 pi squared times L over G. So whenever there is a number or a term under the square root sign and you squared it, the square root sign will be cleared. So the square will cancel the square root sign. So we now have L over G. Okay, let's continue. We want to make L the subject. We have been able to clear the square root sign. Now we do our multiplication. So t squared is equal to 4 pi squared times L. Since we are going to have 4 pi squared over 1. Any number that stands on its own is over 1. So this one too is over 1. So 4 pi squared times L will give us 4 pi squared L. 1 times G will give us G. Okay, we now have an equation that involves a fraction. We said in the previous videos that whenever the equation involves a fraction, what you do is that you identify the fractions, you find the denominators, then you find the LCM of the denominators. Now the denominator here is G, so that is what we are going to use as the LCM. That's the only denominator here, so that is what we are going to use as the LCM. You multiply each term by the LCM. The LCM is now G. So we multiply the term, which is t squared, by the LCM, which is G. Then we multiply this term here, 4 pi squared L over G, by the LCM, which is G, in order to clear the fractions. So t squared times G is equal to 4 pi squared L over G times G. Now when you do that, you can see that you have G to cancelling G, so the fraction is also gone. T squared times G will give us T squared G. Now we have 4 pi squared L because the G and G has cancelled each other out, so we have 4 pi squared L. We want to make L the subject. What is attached to L is 4 pi squared. What do? We divide both sides by the variable or the numbers attached to L. So we divide both sides by 4 pi squared. So 4 pi squared, we will use it to divide what we have on the left hand side. Then we will do the same thing to the right hand side. So you see that 4 pi squared here will cancel 4 pi squared here, giving us L. So L is equal to T squared G over 4 pi squared. So we have been able to make L the subject of the equation. We got L is equal to T squared G divided by 4 pi squared. So we have been able to achieve the first goal, to make L the subject of the equation. The second one said that we should find L when T is equal to 1, G is equal to 9.81, and pi is equal to 3.14. So what do? We substitute these new values into the equation. So wherever we see T, we will write 1. Where we see G, we will replace it with 9.81, and we will replace pi with 3.142. So that's exactly what you are going to do. You have 1 squared times 9.81 divided by 4 times 3.142 squared. Now you punch this on your calculator. So if you take your calculator, you are going to have 1 squared times 9.81 divided by 4 times 3.142 squared. Okay, so it's equal to 0.24845. The number goes on and on. But the question told us to give our answer in 3 significant figures. The question told us to give our answer in 3 significant figures. If you watch the video on approximation, I explained how to correct your answer to 3 significant figures. I also explained how to use your calculator to do it. In this video, I'm going to use the calculator to do so. Watch once again. Okay, so this is our answer. Now, to use your calculator to correct this answer to 3 significant figures, just press on Shift, you press on Mode, you pick the 7th option, which is psi, the significant figures. It's asking you psi 0 to 9, which means that how many significant figures do you want? I want 3 significant figures, so I'll press on 3. So my calculator is now in 3 significant figure mode. Then I'll press the whole expression that we have here once again. So 1 squared times 9.81 divided by 4 times 3.142 squared. You press enter and your calculator rounds it to 3 significant figures for you. So it's 2.48 times 10 to the power minus 1, which is the same as 0.248. So we have been able to use our calculator to round it to 3 significant figures. Once again, if you watch the video on approximation, I explained into details how you can do that manually and how you can also use your calculator to do it. So if you don't understand this, watch that video and it was explained into details there. So we've been able to make L the subject of the equation, and we have also been able to find L when t is equal to 1, g is equal to 9.81, and pi is equal to 3.142. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this video by clicking on the subscribe button below. In the next video, we are going to solve another question on changing the subject of equations that involve squares or square root sign. Bye bye.